I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Shane Beamer. Shane, I got a lot really that I want to get to today. And I promise we're not going to just ask all Mayo questions. We're not going to do that. I do have to start though with you tweeting out that you took a break from Mayo, as one should, given how much Mayo you were exposed to. But you are now a Mayo spokesperson for Duke's Mayo. Be honest, they basically gave you an open invitation to be that after the way that things played out in the bowl game.
I think our I think our university saw an unbelievable opportunity to capitalize on and relationship with Duke's Mayo. I think Duke's Mayo sees an awesome opportunity to potentially do some things with the University of South Carolina athletics department, and certainly the fact that I got beat up by the Mayo cooler when it got dumped on me. They owe me a little something, that's for sure.
Okay. Could you have passed a concussion test after that?
Probably not. It was more, and it wasn't so much in the head, it was more like the back of my neck and where they got me in. So it was certainly that muscle, like right there in the back of your neck, was definitely sore for a couple of days.
I mean, if that happens to me, my first reaction is, didn't you guys practice this? Have you not dumped an entire Gatorade tub of Mayo on somebody before? Like the execution, everything up to that point was flawless. And then you get to that point, I would have turned around and been like, really? Like, what are we doing? Saban's allowed to get mad at his players when they dump the Gatorade and they hit him in the head. You should be allowed to be mad that the volunteers, whoever it was, could not properly dump the Mayo.
No, it's a good point. When I got hit, it startled me so much. I didn't want to move because I knew the Mayo was coming immediately after that. They tried, because there really wasn't like a countdown where I could brace myself. It was just sit there, you got hit. It was kind of like what happened. And then I didn't want to move because if I turn around, I get the Mayo right in the face. So it was really like one of those, just sit still, brace yourself, deal with it, and move on. But I did miss an opportunity. I could have just like gotten up and stormed out of the chair or something at that point and avoided it. But all in good fun, and certainly beats the alternative of losing the game and not getting dumped with Mayo.
You certainly found joy that day, and yes, that was an absolute dig at Dennis Dodd. I won't ask you to revisit that, and I'll instead just hate on the Cardinal fan here. I feel like your game should be shown to all the people who say bowl games don't matter. How much did that day sort of lead to you just having all this offseason momentum, and you guys are kind of the ultimate good vibes team in college football right now?
Yeah, no, I think it was huge. I was telling someone the other day, all bowl games are big, in my opinion, for the teams that are playing in them. And for what you just said, I mean, you're never going to hear me say there's too many bowl games, because these young men and coaches and staff work way too hard, and to be able to go to experience a bowl game is really special. So all bowl games are big in their own way, but some bowl games are really bigger than others. For the reasons you just alluded to with us. And, for us to win 3 out of our last 5 games, for us to beat Florida and Auburn down the stretch, and then to finish with a huge win against someone that I've got a ton of respect for in Mac Brown, a North Carolina team that was ranked top 10 preseason. In Charlotte, a city where South Carolina hadn't had a ton of success their last couple of times up there. I mean, it was so big for so many reasons, and the energy and the positivity and excitement that just that one win has created has been really cool to see, and just so happy for our players and fans and everyone that follows South Carolina football, because that was a great day for South Carolina, being in Charlotte, where we've got a ton of alumni and fans that live up there with tons of Tar Heel fans. So it was really, really impactful and has continued to be. And you got to do a good job of not living in the past. I mean, we've moved on, and it's the 2022 team right now trying to get ready for the 2022 season. But certainly we're going to do everything in our power to continue to capitalize on that day in Charlotte, because it was really, really big for us for a lot of reasons.
You've told the story of Spencer's commitment, and for those who don't know, I'll kind of give a brief rundown where Austin Sogner's dad essentially suggested that you should reach out because you had already had that relationship with him. Obviously, you had a few calls, but you didn't even need to host him on a visit because like you already had that relationship there, and you didn't need to conveniently have Darius Rucker in the recording studio being like, oh, hey Spencer, what's going on? Then they call you up and they let you know that it's happening. You step outside your house and literally scream with excitement because you didn't want to scare anybody in your household. But my question is that made no difference whatsoever, you stepping outside of your house. Surely you scared people in your household with yelling when Spencer Rattler committed to South Carolina.
Yeah, my kids were probably even more excited than I was about it. They love Stogg, because I was the tight ends coach at Oklahoma, and he was one of our tight ends. So Austin had been in our house multiple times at Oklahoma, so my kids loved him. And then obviously they were there with Spencer, so they were certainly excited. They know my wife and our 3 children. They realized what great additions to our program both those young men were. So they were just as excited, and I could have screamed inside, could have screamed outside. It would have been my kids and wife, excited about it as well, because we certainly got better as a football team that day.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I heard like my significant other scream that loud, I would assume bloody murder has happened. But with you, it's like, well, you're such a positive guy. You probably yell like that a decent amount of times. Like, was the initial reaction like, oh, concerned, or they're like, all right, he just got somebody big. This is going to be good news, not bad news?
No, I think they had a pretty good idea, because a couple hours before that, I had talked or texted with Spencer and Austin, and they had essentially alluded to the fact that a decision was coming pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I want to say when I saw him coming, I think I said this is because I think it's Spencer's dad's name popped up on the caller ID, and then they were all on the call together. And I remember saying, this is Spencer, this is Spencer's dad calling. So they knew what to expect. It's kind of like when Ray Tanner hired me and I got a phone call from Ray Tanner. My wife knew he was either calling to say we're hiring somebody else or we're offering you a job. I don't know if the phone call from Spencer was as intense. It wasn't, but it was the same mindset that, we're either going to get some really good news or some really bad news on this call. And fortunately, it was some great news.
Everyone's talking about Spencer, and understandably so. You have a different perspective on him than I think any of us do, even though we're the ones in the media who are going to sit here and talk ad nauseum about those expectations. What do you think expectations should be for him?
I think Spencer has high expectations for himself, and carries himself that way. And, I think with Spencer, it's come here and just be the very best player he can be and make this football team the very best that it can be. And he's done a great job of coming in, he and the other transfers that we've brought in, of just being themselves and blending right into the locker room. And the transition, it's not easy, to come into another program and in January like he did, and then all of a sudden you're in a different locker room and with a new team. And he's done a great job of acclimating himself to our program, and just trying to be the very best player, leader, person that he can be. And his talent speaks for itself, and he's got a lot of work to do. But as we record this, we're 4 practices through spring practice, and he's had a really, really good 4 practices of jumping in and learning this system, trying to marry it with some of the things that he did at Oklahoma and things like that as well.
It's cool to see South Carolina have a guy. It feels a little bit different. And I talked to my guy Brad Crawford about this a lot, about how it's unique. And South Carolina has never had an all-SEC quarterback, never had a quarterback drafted since they've been a member of the SEC. I know your job is to focus on winning football games, let the rest take care of itself. But at the game's most important position, is that something that matters? Like, does that carry significance for you?
No, it's huge. I mean, you've got to have that. And we're excited about, the other quarterbacks that we have as well. I mean, there were a lot of expectations for Luke Doty going into last season, and rightfully so. And I hate that Luke, got hurt midway through the season or before the season, then midway through the season, and didn't have the year that he wanted. But, he's out there competing and trying to get better. And young freshmen that we have here in the program that we have high expectations for. So quarterback and all those positions are critical, and everyone's competing and trying to get better. But I don't care what level you are, NFL, college, high school, you've got to have a great quarterback. And, it's proven. You look at the best teams in the NFL, they got a quarterback. And you look at the LA Rams, getting no disrespect to Jared Goff, but you bring in Matthew Stafford and they win a Super Bowl. And all the teams across the NFL and free agency right now that are trying to, sign quarterbacks. So certainly when you have a great quarterback, it makes everything better. The spirit of the practices, the confidence, the way that the defense is challenged, the way that the offense is able to produce. I mean, it's just that's a key position, probably unlike any other position in sports, because it is so much is expected of that position, and that position affects winning and losing, so directly.
I think a lot of people would look at the Mayo Bowl and the momentum you have right now, and you're probably sick of hearing that word momentum because it's like, what does it really mean in year two? But they would look at your situation and say that, oh, he's still in the honeymoon phase. And I disagree with that, because I think down late at home against Vandy, the honeymoon phase is over. Like, there's no, hey, good vibes aren't going to get you out of this situation. And you make the switch to Zeb Nolan in that spot. And if that doesn't work, you get blasted for it. And I think you know that. I know you can't necessarily think about the downside of your decisions, but in those defining moments with quarterbacks, and this was something that a lot of people talked about with you and your background, how you're going to handle those situations. Did you find yourself leaning on a particular coach that you've worked with in the past to kind of trust some of that judgment, or maybe hark back to certain situations?
No. In a in-game situation, not necessarily. You go all the way back to August. Yeah, I guess it would have been August when Luke got hurt, and certainly bringing a graduate assistant out of the office and onto the football field, it's a little unorthodox. But so I remember talking to Lincoln Riley. I called Lincoln back in August. I certainly rely on him and pick his brain on things, because I've been with him most recently, and worked for Kirby Smart, but it's not really, I can't really call Kirby and necessarily get strategy like that, considering we're playing them week 3 last season. But I talked to Lincoln about it, and I think other coaches in other sports, the men's golf coach at the University of Oklahoma, Ryan Hibble, is one of my best friends, and they, compete for the national championship in golf. But he's a great coach. It's not football, it's golf. But, I bounced that idea off Ryan Hibble. Like, is this crazy, you think, to bring our graduate assistant to the field and potentially being our starting quarterback? So there's a small group of people that I rely on, and other coaches in college athletics that aren't in the SEC that I'll, talk to. But in that situation, you're right. It was one of those, you realized it was a critical moment in your season at that point, that Vanderbilt game. And it was one of those, you make this move, and you put Zeb in. This either goes really well or it doesn't. And I knew that was a critical moment. And I think really for that, it's just, you a lot of those decisions that you're making during the game is based on a lot of intel, if you will, from months and weeks and days leading up to that game. And then honestly, a lot of it's just a gut feel. And Pete Limbo is our special teams coordinator and associate head coach, and he's been a head coach. And there are things during the game where I'll talk to him and, what are you thinking about this? And what do you think about that? And that situation with Zeb and Luke that day, it was more just, kind of just a gut feel. And obviously Luke's health, affected that situation a little bit as well, not being able to run around as much. And it worked out great. But it's one of those things when you sit in this chair, every decision is going to be magnified, and you've got to be willing to. As I sit here at my desk, I've got a note that says, when you're in this chair, you have to love making tough decisions, and you go with your gut and the best knowledge you have about those decisions, and hope it works out.
On the offense side of the ball, everybody's really excited, especially after the bowl game. Jaheim Bell, DK Joyner, DK Dak, whatever you want to call him. He's had a billion different names, billion different roles at South Carolina. I got a suggestion. Everybody's anal about the depth chart in college football. It's like, oh, what are we going to release? What are we not going to release? Put him under football player and don't worry about position. Like, no, I know Jaheim Bell is like he's listed as a wide back. I saw Satterfield called him, Debo 2.0, which that's an incredible thing to say. but just football player, and then just let them get on the field, get touches in whatever way possible? Is it kind of trending in that direction for how they're going to be used in 2022?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you could add, a few of those guys on our offense to that. And we're probably not a lot different than a lot of schools, but to me, it's you find out, what those guys, your players on offense, what they can do. And then let's try and figure out a way to get our best guys on the field. And we've got a few more playmakers and a little bit more depth than what we had at the skill positions on offense last year at this time. And they can do a lot of different things. We've got some running backs that can do a little more out of the backfield and have unique skill sets, and the receiving group has come along. And then Jaheim, I mean, people obviously remember that, he caught the two long explosive touchdown passes in the bowl game, but we also handed the ball to him on the first play of the game for about a 12-yard run or something on a little counter play. And he can do a lot. There's no question about it. And the more you can keep teams off balance, the better. But you're exactly right. To me, Jaheim's just a football player. I mean, we recruited him in Oklahoma when I was there. Lincoln loved him. I loved him as a player. And he can do a lot. He's got a lot to improve on, like all our guys do. But DK has shown how flexible and multiple he can be. Jaheim. And the more, we tell our guys all the time, the more you can do, the better. Whether that's offense, defense, special teams. And we certainly got a lot of guys on offense that can do a lot of different things.
The post-game celebrations are they're must-see TV watching you. I mean, that was one of the things that we learned in year one. Probably could have predicted that, of course, given the support you have from your family. But what was the best moment that you shared with your mom and dad after a game?
It's a good question. All of them on the field, were pretty special. All the first game and first SEC win. But I think probably the Florida game. We won that one, and or maybe in Auburn. We won that one to get bowl eligible, and then my dad just saying great job and telling me how proud he was. And then after the games, I do the post-game press conference with the media, and then I go and I do post-game radio with Todd Ellis, our radio play-by-play guy, and then I record the weekly coaches show, the television show. So I do all that after the game. So it's a while after a game before I leave the stadium. And after that game, my parents stayed with me the whole time, went to the press conference, went to the radio, then went with me to do the TV show. And then they rode home with me, and my wife and kids, they were long gone. They were ready to go home. But riding home with my parents after that game was pretty cool, and just sitting in traffic and being in the car and people, recognizing me if I'm stopped at a stoplight or just sitting in traffic, and fans coming up and banging on the windows and wanting a high five out the windows and things like that, and honking horns. That was a pretty cool moment, because there'd been so many times where I rode home with my dad after a win, and he's the head coach. So to be, riding home with him in the car, and after a huge win like that, where you become bowl eligible, back to the house, that was a pretty cool night, but a pretty cool post game and time that we were able to spend together, just the three of us.
I realized that whenever South Carolina does anything on special teams, I just say, oh, that's Beamer ball. Like any good play, you just that's the natural default. It probably should be. There are probably tons of ways in which you and your dad are similar, but what did this first year as a head coach teach you about maybe your differences that you have between you and your dad?
I probably show, I'm probably a little bit more, emotional on the sidelines than maybe he was. I try, and he was very steady as a head coach, and always used to say, never get too high, never get too low. And I feel like I do a decent job of that, but you never really saw him sprinting down the sidelines and jumping on players' backs and things like that, like I've done. So that's probably one thing, is just that. And other than that, it's really a lot of similarities. I think our demeanor and things on the sideline are probably pretty similar, during the game, and the way that I try and handle myself during the week. I try and be a lot like him, just the consistency that he showed. So I'd say I got a lot more qualities like him than not like him. But I may be, I don't want to use the word passionate, but probably a little bit more overly excited when great things happen.
doesn't have to like calm you down or anything like that after a game, does he? Like I always picture you always look so fired up after a game, and he's always like, "Hey, 1 week at a time, we gotta even keel, we gotta ride this out. Like it's the SEC, it'll chew you up, it'll spit you out." Like does he doesn't have to like talk you down off of wins, does he?
He doesn't, or at least he hasn't tried to. I'm sure there's some post-game press conferences or things where I maybe say something. I went viral after the Georgia game when I was talking about all the 5 stars, and I was pretty fired up. And after the bowl win in that post-game press conference, so I'll say things sometimes, and I know if he's like in the room. If he is in the room, like I'm thinking, or even if he's not in a room and he's watching, I'm thinking, God, Dad's not going to like that. He wouldn't, he doesn't probably think that was good, but no, he doesn't. I think usually after the games, because this from being around it. I mean, it's so emotional and draining for 3.5 hours that like when that game's over, you're beat. And he's never had this calm me down or anything like that, because usually at that point I'm beat down myself after the last 3.5 hours of competing, and he usually doesn't say a whole lot. It's really just good win, and thought you guys played hard and all that.
Do you have more text waiting for you after the Florida game or after the Mayo Bowl?
Honestly, I think Florida game for sure, because that was on ESPN prime time. Everybody saw it. That and the Auburn game, those text messages were up. I think it was like 200 plus, both those games. Dang. From a lot of people. It was pretty cool. People that you didn't realize would be watching. Had a bunch after the Mayo Bowl for sure, and that was cool. But the Florida and Auburn games being on prime time on a Saturday night on either SEC Network or ESPN, I forget which one it was there were a lot of those nights for sure.
You have a team with expectations now, and that can be fleeting in the SEC. You've been part of enough teams to kind of see what the ebbs and flows are like. What's the biggest difference with dealing with this year's team and this year's mindset compared to the situation that you walked into last year?
Yeah. I know last year at this time, this was a team that probably didn't have a whole lot of confidence, and we were really trying to build up that confidence. And not that they didn't believe in themselves, because they did. They showed that with the way they played last season. But it was also, it's a team that was coming off a 2-win season and then a losing season before that as well. So they hadn't had a ton of success on the field. So you really try to celebrate every small victory that happened last year on and off the field, and just and build up that confidence. And you still are in a lot of ways now. That's always will be my coaching style, to build up confidence and have guys believing in themselves and believing they're invincible and whatnot. But you also got to manage it now with some high expectations from the outside. Last year's group, nobody thought we were going to win 3 games, much less win 7 and go to a bowl game. Now there are expectations for this group, which is what you want. You want those high expectations year in, year out. And it's a balancing act of, it's a challenge of continuing to instill that confidence and build up the confidence, but also making them realize that, we had a great win, but we've got a lot in the bowl game, but we've got a lot of work that we have to do, as well. We won 3 out of our last 5, but the 2 that we didn't win were ugly performances, and really just being more consistent. And there's so many challenges going into this season, but that's one of them. And I go back to last year, Connor, like we started out 2-0, then we went 2-2. And then after that, we never won 2 games in a row, and we never lost 2 games in a row. So there's a lot to be said for the resiliency of the group of always coming back from a loss, but also being able to handle the success that we had when you do have a win, following that up with another win the following week, and just continuing to just stack good days. So that's what we're doing right now in spring practice. And we have all the time, but really just emphasizing, just the consistency and just productive days on and off the field, day in, day out, and for that long-term success.
I remember, yeah, after the Mizzou game, you're like, we didn't handle expectations the way that we should have. Like we were maybe some guys got a little bit too into their press clippings and all those different things. Like that is a difficult thing to have to manage. Have you kind of found your voice of what it's like to be able to like, it's easy to feel like, okay, I know how to react after a win. I know how to build my guys up to celebrate those moments, like you said, especially when the expectations are low. But like when you have those moments, have you try to find that point of being critical versus just being like demeaning? Because I got to imagine with the stakes where they are, that's not an easy thing. And it's not a given, especially for a first year coach in the SEC.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever be demeaning.
Yeah.
Every Sunday after a game, win or lose, we come into the team meeting and we talk about the things we did well and the things we didn't do well. And it may be a huge shutout victory or it may be a lopsided loss, but we're going to treat every Sunday the same. Here's the things we did well. Here's the things we did poorly. And there's those things in every game, win or lose. So we're trying to be very honest, after every game about where we are and what went well the day before and what didn't do well and what we have to do going forward and why we lost the game. And me as a coach looking back and saying, why didn't we perform better? And, you go back to that Missouri game, like I heard it all week. I mean, we had a great win over Florida. The talk out there is that we can't handle success. There's going to be a letdown because you're going out to Missouri to play I think it was a 3 p.m. local time game on a Saturday afternoon. So you heard that going into it. So I did everything I could to combat that, going into the game. And I still believe we were ready to play that night against Missouri. Like, I don't think we weren't ready to play. We got off to a hell of a start against them, went down the field. I think we scored, and then we were actually driving to have a chance to go up 2 scores. And then we, turned the guy free on a run play and had a fumble in the backfield and then give Missouri credit because they played really, really well. So that had something to do with us not playing well, but I don't think it was because we weren't ready to play or didn't handle expectations. I think, Missouri played better than us that day. So as a coach, you look back and say, why is that? Why didn't we play better? But mentally, I felt like we were in a good place, but you always just self-analyze and find ways to get better. But certainly, last year, this year, all the years that I'm going to be here at South Carolina, after every game, you try and, dig into what we did well, what we didn't do well, learn from it, and let's try and be better the next week.
I want to get you out of here with 5 rapid fire questions. Just first thing that comes to mind, however long you want to answer. Does that work for you?
Yep.
All right. Biggest problem right now in college football: tampering, NIL, targeting, or faking injuries?
Targeting. just because I think there's different issues, good and bad, but I think just the inconsistency and then the punishment and things like that. There's people above me that are making those decisions and things like that, but it's tough to officiate, and there's just to me a lot of punishments that maybe don't fit the crime right now.
How much Mayo did Duke send you in the last few months here?
Not a lot. I think they're probably mad at me because I said going into it that I wasn't a real big Mayo fan and didn't like it, which I don't love it, but a little bit. They sent me they were fantastic. They sent a very nice care package after we got back to Columbia with, Mayo and a hard hat that had Duke's Mayo on it as well. So it was all in good fun. They've been very good, but not a ton of Mayo, but they've been a great partner and really supportive.
Sam Pittman told me that his text to Kirby after he won the national championship was just badass. What was your text to Kirby after Georgia won it all?
It wasn't that. I think it was more just, great win. And I knew he was getting flooded with text messages. So we actually talked, 2 or 3 days later. But my message to him was just great job. When they are really, really talented, but they're really well coached. And I told him that a lot got made of me talking about the 5 stars that run better than everybody on this call, but they're so well coached and they play really hard and everybody's gunning for you. And for them to play like they did, I was happy for him. And then I just know what it means to him as an alumnus of the University of Georgia, how important that program is to him. So for me, it was pretty cool just to see that and being able to celebrate that with his family and Vince Dooley on the field after the game. So just recognizing that and excited for him from somebody that spent the first 2 years there together with him.
What would have been your dream NIL deal as a player? As an all world long snapper.
Yeah, that was a down the line receiver as well. That's a good question. Marty Smith on ESPN, he and I have talked about this because we both grew up in the same area, but there was a sporting goods store there in Blacksburg called CMT Sporting Goods. And probably it would have been just like some sort of deal with CMT. Marty said it would be like the Newman wide receiver gloves that everybody wore back in the day. So it would probably have been something like that there in Blacksburg. I was pretty low maintenance. And I'm trying to think, there wasn't a whole lot that I was into back then. I guess it would have been like Sega Genesis or something like that when you were playing video games. So it may have been something with the Sega or something with the local sporting goods store.
Last one for you. Was holding Sir Big Spur the scariest moment of your life?
I did it yesterday too.
Really?
Yeah. So it's I've done it 3 times now. When I first got hired, they brought Sir Big Spur over to the office to meet me. Held him on in my office. They gave him to me after the game. There in the bowl game when I was up on the stage for the trophy presentation. And then Sir Big Spur came by the facility yesterday to present me a painting of holding Sir Big Spur at the bowl game, which Beth and Van Clark, they're awesome friends of our program, and they take care of Sir Big Spur. But it is pretty terrifying because you can I held him yesterday and you can literally hear him breathing.
Oh God.
And I mean, you see this and all that. And it's like, if this guy flips out on me, what am I going to do right here in the lobby? So that's the only thing going through my head. So it is Sir Big Spur is awesome, but it is pretty terrifying. I won't lie. My kids love them. So, I mean, my oldest daughter, she'll hold him at games, and she's a lot braver than I am because I'm thinking about all the things that could potentially go wrong.
You're holding it out like this, like it's a baby that needs to be changed, and not like a baby that you're cradling or something. I mean, you look scared. I would be too.
I do. I'm like that, the baby that needs to be changed. And then my daughter, I've got a picture of my daughter. I mean, she's just sitting here, just literally holding Sir Big Spur and petting him. So she didn't get that gene from me because I'm scared.
Your daughter's got all the toughness points.
She does.
Jay, this has been excellent. Really, really appreciate the time. Best of luck with everything in year 2.